The void around Threshold Station burned with dying ships. Admiral James Kelford gripped his command chair as another impact shuddered through the UES Indomitable, feeling the vibration through his bones. He was 53 years old, a career officer who had spent 3 decades preparing for this exact moment, and now that it had arrived he felt only cold certainty. Around him, holographic displays painted red icons blinking out one by one. Each icon represented a ship. Each ship held hundreds of lives. Commander Robert Thane stumbled as an explosion rocked the deck. His tactical console showed 32 human ships destroyed, 81 damaged. The Krynthian Dominion had brought 800 warships. Humanity had mustered 200. His best friend Lieutenant Marcus Holland had died 4 minutes ago when plasma fire tore through his frigate's command deck. Thane had watched the icon flash red and disappear. His hands shook over the controls. Admiral, Commander Winters is requesting permission to reform the defensive line. She says, if we do not regroup, the entire fleet will be picked apart within the hour. Kelford watched the Krynthian flagship Pride of Krynthos holding position at the center of their formation. Supreme Admiral Vorth'ak commanded from that vessel, a warrior who had crushed 16 species over 60 years of conquest. The Krynthians had perfected a doctrine of overwhelming force and decisive battle. They had never lost. They believed their methods were invincible. Kelford needed them to keep believing that. Deny Commander Winters' request. All ships execute Protocol Nightfall immediately. Thane's hands froze. Protocol Nightfall was not a retreat. It was total dispersal, every ship choosing its own vector away from battle. To any observer it would look exactly like what it was designed to look like. A panicked rout. A fleet breaking apart in terror. Sir, are you certain? Execute the order, Commander. The human formation simply dissolved. Ships broke away in every direction. Some accelerated toward the inner solar systems, fleeing toward Earth. Others turned toward empty space, their faster-than-light drives spinning up for random jumps. A handful of damaged vessels limped toward nearby asteroid fields to hide. 3 ships, either desperate or suicidal, actually angled toward Krynthian space itself. 168 ships executed the dispersal protocol. 18 would join strike groups positioning across Krynthian space. The remaining 150 would regroup at Earth, buying time for the real war to unfold. Aboard the Pride of Krynthos, Supreme Admiral Vorth'ak watched the human fleet disintegrate. He was massive even by Krynthian standards, his exoskeleton decorated with medals and scars from 100 battles. His compound eyes tracked each fleeing vessel with professional detachment. They are scattering, Commander Kresh reported. No formation, no coordination. The human flagship is preparing to jump. Vorth'ak studied the display with the confidence of absolute victory. He had expected more from Admiral Kelford. Intelligence suggested the human commander was analytical, cautious, a student of warfare. This flight confirmed a crueler truth. When confronted with overwhelming odds, even clever strategists chose survival over honor. Something nagged at him, though. The scatter pattern was unusually wide. Inefficient even for panic. Ships were spreading across an enormous volume of space at angles that made no tactical sense for a retreat toward human territory. Sir, shall we pursue? Vorth'ak considered. They could hunt down perhaps 50 vessels before the rest jumped to faster than light. It would delay their primary objective, the invasion of Earth itself. No, let them run. They are preserving what remains of their fleet. Smart, but it will not save them. Begin securing the station wreckage and prepare the fleet for transit to their homeworld. Around him, the Krynthian bridge crew worked with practiced efficiency. They had won as they always won. The humans had broken as everyone eventually broke when confronted with Krynthian might. Vorth'ak composed his report to the Krynthian Council. Threshold Station captured. Human fleet scattered and broken. Path to Earth is clear. Estimate conquest completion within 30 days. He did not think to plot where each human ship had actually gone. He saw only chaos, disorder, defeat. James Kelford watched the Krynthian fleet gathering itself for the transit to Earth. His hands were shaking now that the immediate crisis had passed. He pressed them flat against his console. "Admiral, they think we are running," Thane said quietly. "Good. That is exactly what I need them to think. 15 days later, the UES Indomitable drifted in the debris field of a dead solar system, engines cold, weapons powered down, hull scarred from threshold. To any sensors sweeping through this region, she appeared to be wreckage slowly tumbling through the void. Inside the ship was very much alive. Kelford stood in the war room before a holographic display that filled the entire chamber. It showed not just human space, not just Krynthian space, but the entire known region spanning 40,000 light-years. Hundreds of icons dotted the display, each representing a human vessel. They looked scattered, random, purposeless. There was nothing random about their positions. Thane stood beside him, face haggard from 15 days maintaining absolute radio silence while hiding in dead space. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Marcus Holland's ship exploding. But now, looking at the holographic display, he was beginning to understand what Kelford had done. Strike Group Omega has reached positions around Krynthos. They are hiding in the debris fields. Captain Diana Kowalski confirms her group can neutralize the orbital shipyards within a 10-minute window. Kelford nodded. The Krynthian home system was filled with natural cover, the result of an ancient planetary collision that created massive asteroid belts in the outer orbits, perfect for hiding a strike force. Interdiction teams. All 7 teams have reached their assigned industrial worlds. They report they can eliminate primary manufacturing facilities on your order. Hunter packs, deployed throughout Krynthian garrison space. They are tracking supply convoys and communication relays. Sir, the Krynthians have not changed their operational security at all. They believe they are completely safe in their own territory, because they have never had to defend it, Kelford said. 300 years of conquest, and no one has ever struck back at their homeworld or infrastructure. They do not even consider it possible. He manipulated the display, zooming in on supply routes connecting Krynthian space to their advancing invasion fleet. Those routes stretched across hundreds of light-years, passing through dozens of systems, relying on fuel depots and ammunition stockpiles established over decades of expansion. When we give the word, all of it disappears. Thane's console chimed with an incoming priority message. His face went pale. Sir, we have a problem. Hunter Pack Delta missed their jump coordinates. They are 3 days behind schedule. They will not reach the Carthex industrial complex in time for synchronized strikes. Kelford felt his stomach tight. Carthex was one of the Dominion's primary manufacturing centers producing ship components and weapons systems. If Delta was delayed, the Krynthians might detect the attack pattern, might realize they were under systematic assault rather than random raids. Can another pack cover their target? Negative. Everyone else is positioned for their own objectives. Kelford stared at the display running calculations. They could abort, pull everyone back, preserve surprise for another opportunity. But Earth did not have another opportunity. The Krynthian invasion fleet was already approaching the solar system. He thought about the 4,000 people who had died at Threshold, about Marcus Holland and all the others whose names would be engraved on memorial walls. We proceed. Order Hunter Pack Delta to execute their strike as soon as they arrive, even if it is out of synchronization. Sir, if Delta is detected before the main strikes, the Krynthians might realize what we are doing. Then we adjust. War never goes according to plan, Commander. The question is whether we can adapt when things go wrong. 16 days after Threshold, the Krynthian invasion fleet reached the outer boundaries of the solar system. Vorth'ak stood on his bridge watching the human homeworld star grow brighter. He had gathered reinforcements during transit, absorbing garrison fleets from conquered systems. The Krynthian Council had finally authorized pulling ships from border defenses, something they had refused to do for what they deemed a routine conquest at Threshold. But this was the final assault on humanity's homeworld. They wanted overwhelming force. His fleet now numbered 1,400 warships, the largest military armada ever assembled in recorded galactic history. Against this force, humanity had arrayed 150 vessels and a network of orbital defense platforms around the outer planets. Commander Patricia Hayes broadcast on all channels from her flagship. Your terms are rejected. You want Earth? Come and take it. But you will pay for every kilometer. Vorth'ak felt professional respect. The human commander knew she was going to die. She was preparing to sell her life as dearly as possible. That was the behavior of a true warrior, even if her cause was hopeless. All ships prepare for full assault. We advance methodically, clear each defensive zone before proceeding to the next. The first engagement began near Neptune, where human platforms and 30 ships had established a defensive perimeter. The battle was fierce and short. Mines seeded throughout the approach vector claimed 11 Krynthian ships. Human weapons fired with desperate precision. The platforms fought until they were reduced to expanding clouds of debris. The human ships still managed to destroy 17 Krynthian vessels before retreating deeper into the system. Vorth'ak watched with growing respect and frustration. The humans were making him pay for every kilometer. At this rate, his fleet would be significantly depleted by the time it reached Earth itself. But there was no turning back. The Dominion had committed its strength. 900 light-years away, James Kelford watched a countdown timer on his tactical display. The timer tracked the commitment of Krynthian resources, the distance their invasion force had traveled from supply lines, the point of no return where their strategic position would become untenable. The timer reached 0. Kelford took a breath, feeling the weight of what he was about to unleash. He thought about the 4,000 people who had died at Threshold, buying him the time he needed. He thought about the crews fighting and dying in the solar system while he prepared to spring the trap. All ships, all positions. Execute Protocol Nightfall Phase 2. Across the breadth of Krynthian space, human warships that had been hiding in silence for more than 30 days suddenly roared to life. Captain Diana Kowalski stood on the bridge of her flagship, watching the countdown in the upper right corner of her display. She was 41 years old, a tactical officer who had risen through merit and determination. Her younger brother had died at Threshold Station, defending the command center when Krynthian boarding parties breached the hull. These shipyards would have produced the vessels to continue the Dominion's conquest. Not anymore. Strike Group Omega consisted of 15 heavy cruisers hiding in the asteroid belt surrounding Krynthos. For 31 days they had maintained absolute silence, drifting with debris, their reactors barely ticking over, watching Krynthian defense patrols sweep past without detecting them. Kowalski's crew was exhausted, nerves frayed from weeks of forced inactivity, knowing that one mistake would expose them all. The countdown reached 60 seconds. All ships' weapons charge, Kowalski ordered. Target packages confirmed. Confirmed, her tactical officer Lieutenant Rivera reported. 6 orbital shipyards, 23 defensive satellites, 12 communication arrays. Firing solutions locked. Kowalski watched the seconds tick down. Her ship, the UES Harbinger, had been built for this kind of strike. Fast, heavily armed, designed to hit hard and escape before the enemy could respond. But they had never tested it against a target this heavily defended. 30 seconds. "Ma'am, the defensive satellites are sweeping our position," Rivera said, his voice tight. "If they detect us before we fire, the entire plan collapses. Hold position. Maintain silence." The satellites sweep past within 200 kilometers of the Harbinger's hiding spot. Kowalski held her breath. The satellite continued its pattern, unaware that 15 human warships were positioned in perfect firing geometry around the shipyards. 10 seconds. All ships standing by, Rivera reported. Kowalski thought about her brother, about Threshold, about every species the Krynthians had conquered. She thought about the weight of this moment, how everything humanity had sacrificed depended on the next 10 minutes. Execute. The 15 ships of Strike Group Omega emerged from the asteroid belt like avenging ghosts. Their weapons were fully charged, targeting computers locked on precise coordinates. The first volley caught the Krynthians completely by surprise. The 6 massive orbital shipyards that produced the Dominion's warships began exploding. Each shipyard was the size of a small city, complex frameworks of metal and energy, containing thousands of workers and partially constructed vessels. Kowalski watched them disintegrate under sustained bombardment, huge sections breaking apart and tumbling away from the primary structures. Defensive satellites activated, their automated systems responding to the attack. Plasma fire began tracking toward Omega's ships. The Harbinger shuddered as near misses detonated against her shields. "Satellite cluster targeting us," Rivera reported, taking evasive action. The Harbinger rolled hard, her engines flaring as she dodged between chunks of debris. 2 satellites exploded as her point defense systems eliminated them. 3 more locked on. "Ma'am, the UES Relentless is taking heavy fire," her communications officer called out. "She reports shield failure imminent." Kowalski made an instant decision. "Harbinger, alter course. Cover Relentless's withdrawal. All ships concentrate fire on remaining satellites." The strike group adapted, ships shifting positions to provide covering fire for damaged vessels. It was exactly the kind of fluid coordination the Krynthians never expected from humans they believed had panicked and fled at threshold. The last shipyard exploded in a brilliant flash of released energy. Communication arrays disintegrated under precise targeting. The planetary defense fleet was launching now, dozens of ships accelerating out from Krynthos itself, but they were too late. "All ships jump coordinates locked," the navigator reported. "Ready to transition on your order." Kowalski watched the defense fleet approaching. They had maybe 90 seconds before those ships entered weapons range. The temptation to stay and fight was strong. She wanted to hurt them more, to make them pay for her brother and everyone else who had died. But that was not the mission. The mission was to cripple their production and escape. "Take us out. All ships execute jump." Strike Group Omega vanished back into faster than light, leaving behind shocked defenders and a homeworld that suddenly understood it was not invulnerable. Interdiction teams struck next, hitting 7 different Krynthian industrial worlds simultaneously. The attacks were coordinated with precision that spoke of months of planning. Shipyards, manufacturing facilities, supply depots, fuel refineries, all targeted, all destroyed. Hunter packs began systematic elimination of supply convoys. Small groups of human ships, never more than 3 vessels together, struck at tankers and transports traveling through interstellar space. But not everything went perfectly. Hunter Pack Delta arrived at Carthage 3 days late. Commander Blake Torrance knew they were behind schedule, knew the timing was wrong, knew that arriving after the synchronized strikes might alert the Krynthians to the larger pattern. But Earth was running out of time and Carthage was too important to leave operational. His 3 ships, the destroyers Defiant, Pathfinder, and Vanguard, emerged from faster than light on the edge of the Carthage system. The industrial continent on the planet below was clearly visible, massive manufacturing complexes covering thousands of square kilometers. Defiant scanners detect automated defense platforms, his sensor officer reported. More than intelligence predicted. Counting 40 platforms plus 6 escort frigates in orbital positions. Torrance swore quietly. This was supposed to be a quick strike against minimal defenses. Instead, they were facing a significant defensive network. "Sir, we can abort," his executive officer suggested. "Jump out and report the upgraded defenses." "Negative. If we leave those facilities operational, the Krynthians can replace losses faster than we can inflict them." He studied the tactical display, calculating odds and approach vectors. The defense platforms were automated, fast but predictable. The frigates were more dangerous, but they were positioned for orbital defense, not interception of fast-moving targets coming in from deep space. "All ships maximum acceleration. We go straight in, fire everything we have at the manufacturing complexes, and jump out before they can coordinate a response. Execute." The 3 destroyers accelerated hard toward Carthage. Defense platforms began firing, plasma bolts tracking toward them. The Defiant shuddered as her shields absorbed hits. "Return fire," Torrance ordered. "Eliminate platforms along our approach vector." The destroyers fired as they raced toward the planet, their weapons systematically destroying defense platforms. But the frigates were moving now, adjusting positions to intercept. Pathfinder reports heavy damage, communications called out. "Her main drive is failing. Tell Pathfinder to continue attack, run, then jump as soon as physically possible. We are not leaving without completing the mission." The manufacturing facilities grew larger in the viewscreen. Torrance could see the massive structures, each one producing ship components, weapons, armor plating. Destroying them would cripple Krynthian production capacity for months. In range, weapons officer announced, "All ships fire. Everything we have." The three destroyers unleashed their full arsenal. Missiles, plasma cannons, kinetic impactors, all directed at the industrial complexes below. The facilities began exploding in sequence, huge fireballs rising into the atmosphere as reactors overloaded and fuel supplies detonated. One frigate managed to close range. Its plasma lance punched through Vanguard's weakened shields and tore into her hull. Vanguard shuddered, venting atmosphere and debris. Vanguard reporting critical damage, communications said, voice shaking. They have lost main power. Life support failing. The frigate was lining up another shot. Defiant alter course. Intercept that frigate. Pathfinder jump out now. Sir, if we engage we might not make the jump window. Do it. The Defiant turned hard, her weapons targeting the frigate. The two ships exchanged fire at close range, shields flaring. The frigate exploded, but not before its final shot penetrated Defiant's armor. Torrance felt the deck buck beneath him as internal explosions rippled through the ship. Jump drive is damaged, the navigator reported. We need 2 minutes for emergency repairs. We do not have 2 minutes. The other frigates were closing now, weapons charging. Get that drive operational or we are all dead. The crew worked frantically as Torrance watched the frigates approaching. 1 minute. The Defiant's weapons kept firing, trying to hold them off. 90 seconds. More hits shook the ship. Jump drive ready, the navigator called out. Coordinates locked, but I cannot guarantee transition stability. Good enough. Jump. The Defiant vanished into faster than light, leaving behind a crippled Vanguard and her crew of 93, and industrial facilities that would never produce another Krynthian warship. Kelford received the casualty report aboard the Indomitable. His face remained expressionless, but his hand clenched around the edge of his console hard enough that his knuckles turned white. 93 people. The entire crew of Vanguard. Dead because he had ordered Delta to proceed despite the timing being wrong. Did they complete their mission? Yes, sir, Thane reported quietly. Carthek's manufacturing is destroyed, but we lost Vanguard and her entire crew. Defiant is heavily damaged. Kelford closed his eyes for just a moment. Acknowledge. Continue operations. Reports are coming in from other strikes. Omega Group has neutralized their targets. Interdiction teams report complete success across all 7 industrial worlds. Hunter packs have eliminated 87% of mapped supply infrastructure. Sir, it is working. For now, Kelford said quietly. Aboard the Pride of Krynthos, Vorth'ak's bridge descended into chaos. Reports flooded in from across the Dominion, each one more catastrophic than the last. Krynthos shipyards destroyed, industrial worlds crippled, supply convoys vanishing, garrison forces calling for help against attackers that struck and disappeared, and every report mentioned human warships. Kresh worked frantically at his console trying to compile a coherent picture. Sir, I am tracking attacks across 47 different systems. The locations correspond to strategic infrastructure, supply routes, manufacturing centers, garrison posts. He overlaid another data set on the tactical display. The retreat vectors from threshold stations superimposed over the current attack locations. The correlation was perfect. They were not fleeing, Kresh said, his voice hollow. They were deploying. Everything we saw at threshold, the panic, the chaos, the scattered retreat. It was orchestrated. They wanted us to think they were broken. Vorth'ak stared at the display, his mind struggling to process what his eyes showed him. For more than 30 days, human ships had been hiding throughout Krynthian space, observing, planning, waiting. While the Dominion celebrated victory and marched toward Earth, humanity had been positioning forces at every critical point in the Krynthian Empire. Wait, Kresh said, his mandibles clicking nervously. He pulled up another data stream. Sir, there is an anomaly. Cartheks was attacked 3 days after the synchronized strikes. That timing inconsistency suggests coordination problems or what, Commander? Or they were waiting for something, waiting for us to be too far from home to respond. Kresh looked up from his console, compound eyes wide with dawning horror. This was not opportunistic raiding. This was a deliberate, coordinated strategy to trap our invasion fleet while systematically dismantling our empire behind us. The magnitude of the deception was staggering. The patience required, the coordination, the willingness to let 4,000 of their own people die to sell the illusion of defeat. "Recall the fleet," Vorth'ak said. "We must return to defend the Dominion." "Sir, we are 18 days from the nearest Krynthian border at maximum speed," Kresh reported, "and our supply lines have been cut. We will run out of fuel before we reach home." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Vorth'ak had led his entire military force deep into enemy territory, committed everything to a single massive assault, and now discovered his empire was being dismantled behind him, while he lacked the resources to return and defend it. A new icon appeared on the tactical display, a communication request from the UES Indomitable. "The human admiral wishes to speak with you." Vorth'ak accepted the transmission. He needed to understand how thoroughly he had been deceived. James Kelford's face appeared on the view screen. He looked exhausted, dark circles under his eyes, uniform showing signs of weeks without proper rest. But his expression was calm. "Supreme Admiral Vorth'ak, by now you understand your situation. Your main fleet is deep in human space, cut off from resupply. Your homeworld's orbital defenses are crippled. Your industrial capacity has been reduced by 73%. Your garrison forces are being systematically eliminated. And you have no way to reinforce any of it. This was planned from the beginning." "Threshold was a tragedy," Kelford said, his voice hardening. "We lost 4,000 people there. Those deaths were real. Real lives, real sacrifices. But I knew your doctrine is built around the idea that a species which flees from battle is weak. So I used that belief against you." He leaned forward slightly. "You wanted to fight us on your terms. A grand fleet engagement where your superior shields and weapons would be decisive. So we changed the game. We did not run from you, Supreme Admiral. We surrounded you, and you never noticed until it was too late. What do you want? Surrender. Immediate and unconditional. Withdraw all your forces from our space. Dismantle your military to purely defensive strength. Release every species under your control. Pay reparations for the lives you took at Threshold. Accept permanent monitoring to ensure compliance." The terms would reduce the Krynthian Dominion from a galactic power to a minor regional force. They would free 17 enslaved species. They would leave Krynthos vulnerable, and if we refuse, then we continue. "My ships are positioned around every critical system in your empire. We do not need to invade your worlds. We just keep destroying your infrastructure, eliminating your supply chains, cutting off your forces. In 3 months, your civilization collapses. No fuel, no ammunition, no industrial capacity. Your people survive, but your empire becomes a memory." Kelford's expression softened slightly. "I do not want to do that, but you attacked us. You tried to conquer us. I will do whatever is necessary to ensure humanity survives and that you never threaten anyone again. The choice is yours." The transmission ended. Vorth'ak stood in silence, feeling 300 years of Krynthian dominance crumbling around him. His fleet was trapped. His empire was being dismantled. The human admiral had given him an impossible choice. Surrender everything or watch it collapse. "How many of your ships died at Threshold to buy time for this?" he asked the empty screen. But Kelford was gone, and there was no answer except the one Vorth'ak already knew. Thousands had died, and they had died not knowing if any of it would work. "Contact the Krynthian Council," Vorth'ak said quietly. "Tell them we are accepting the human terms. The war is over." Around him, his bridge crew stood in stunned silence. For the first time in their history, the Krynthian Dominion had been defeated. Not through superior force or better technology, but through a strategy so subtle, so patient, so thoroughly executed that they had never seen it coming. In the solar system, Commander Hayes received the coded message from the Krynthian flagship. She read it twice, then broadcast to all human forces. "Attention all ships. The Krynthian fleet is withdrawing. They have accepted our terms. Cease fire. The war is over. We won." The bridge of her flagship erupted in cheers. Crew members embraced, some crying with relief, others laughing with disbelief. They had expected to die in this system. Instead, they had survived. 3 months after the Treaty of Threshold was signed, a Krynthian transport requested permission to dock at the rebuilt Threshold station. The request came with diplomatic credentials and a personal message for Fleet Admiral Kelford. Kelford authorized the docking. He met the transport in one of the station's conference rooms, accompanied only by Thane. The Krynthian who entered was Vorth'ak, though he wore no insignia of rank now. He was smaller than Kelford remembered, or perhaps defeat had diminished him in ways beyond the physical. "Admiral, thank you for agreeing to meet. Mr. Vorth'ak, what brings you to Threshold?" Vorth'ak's compound eyes focused on the view beyond the conference room window where a memorial wall was visible in the adjacent chamber. "I wanted to see it, the place where you defeated us, where this all began. This is where 4,000 of my people died," Kelford said quietly, "where we lost a battle and had to find another way to win the war. You used our assumptions against us, our doctrine, our certainty that we understood how warfare worked." Vorth'ak turned back to face him. "I have spent 3 months analyzing what happened, how we missed it, how we could have been so blind, and what did you conclude? That we stopped learning. We conquered 17 species using the same methods, and that success made us believe those methods were the only methods. We became predictable, stagnant. You studied us. You understood us better than we understood ourselves, and you exploited that understanding perfectly." Kelford was quiet for a moment. "In another situation with different circumstances you might have defeated us. This was not about one species being superior. It was about adaptation versus stagnation. Why are you telling me this? Because how we think about the past shapes how we build the future. If Krynthians believe you lost because you are inferior, you will never recover. But if you understand you lost because you stopped adapting, you can change. You can rebuild. You can become something better. The Dominion conquered 17 species. We enslaved billions. Why would you want us to become strong again? Because a galaxy where species cooperate is stronger than one where species dominate. I do not want Krynthians to disappear. I want them to evolve, to take that military precision and strategic discipline and apply it to building instead of conquering." Vorth'ak was silent for a long time, looking again at the memorial wall visible through the window. Finally, he spoke. "How many of them knew? When they died at Threshold, how many understood what you were planning?" Kelford felt the question like a physical blow. His carefully maintained composure cracked for just an instant, and Vorth'ak saw the pain beneath. "None of them. Protocol Nightfall was classified at the highest level. They died thinking we had lost, that their sacrifice bought nothing but a few more days for Earth to prepare for invasion. That must be difficult to carry. Every single day, every single name on that wall." Vorth'ak moved toward the door, then paused. "For what it is worth, Admiral, you won because you were willing to pay a price we never considered. Not in ships or territory, but in carrying the weight of decisions that had no good options. That is a kind of strength we never understood." The Krynthian left, and Kelford stood with Thane in the conference room looking out at the memorial wall. "Do you think he meant that?" Thane asked. "About understanding. I think he is trying to. Whether his people follow him in that understanding remains to be seen." They walked together into the memorial chamber. The polished black surface held 4,073 names engraved with precision and care. Lieutenant Marcus Holland, Captain Rachel Brennan, Commander Thomas Nakamura, and 4,070 others who had died buying humanity time to execute a plan they had not known existed. Kelford stood before the wall reading names quietly. Some he remembered, faces and voices from meetings and briefings. Others were strangers, people he had never met but whose lives had ended because of orders he had given. He placed his hand against the cold metal, feeling the engraved letters under his palm. Behind him, Thane waited in respectful silence. Finally, he spoke. "The Council approved your promotion, Fleet Admiral. They want you to command the entire unified Earth Defense Force." Kelford nodded slowly, still gazing at the names. "I would trade the promotion to have them back, I know, sir. But what you did ensured their sacrifice meant something. The Krynthians will not threaten anyone again. 17 species are free, and every potential aggressor in the galaxy just learned that humanity does not play by the old rules. That is what worries me. We proved humans can outthink and outmaneuver anyone who challenges us, but I do not want us to become what the Krynthians were. Arrogant, convinced of our superiority. Then we do not. We remember Threshold. We remember we are not invincible, just very good at adapting. and we use that to protect others, not conquer them. Kelford turned from the memorial. The galaxy is watching us now. They saw us turn defeat into victory. Some are impressed, others are terrified. We need to make sure they learn the right lesson, which is that humanity does not want to rule the galaxy. We do not even particularly want to fight. But if you force us into a corner, if you mistake our restraint for weakness, if you think our retreat means we are beaten— Kelford paused, his eyes returning to the names on the wall one final time— you will discover we were not running away. We were just getting into position. The stars beyond Threshold Station burned with ancient light. Human ships moved among them, scattered across light years, positioned at strategic points throughout known space. To anyone watching, they might appear vulnerable, spread too thin, disconnected. But appearances, as the galaxy had learned, could be very deceiving indeed. Humanity had not run from the Krynthians. They had surrounded them. They had turned defeat into deployment, retreat into strategy, desperation into victory. And they had done it by understanding a fundamental truth that their enemy had forgotten. That adaptability was worth more than strength. That thinking differently was more powerful than fighting conventionally. That sometimes the best way to win was to appear to lose. The lesson of Threshold Station would echo across the galaxy for generations. Never mistake retreat for defeat. Never assume that what you see is what is real. Never believe that because something has always worked, it will always work. And never, ever underestimate those who are willing to sacrifice everything to protect what they love.